Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the County District 4 Virtual Grants Workshop. We will be letting people join the webinar tonight. So we will be getting started in 1 minute. Thank you. Okay, that was one quick minute. So thank you everyone again for joining us tonight. Welcome to the County District 4 Virtual Grants Workshop hosted by the Office of Supervisor Monica Montgomery Stepp. My name is Karen Montufar Federico, the Deputy Director of Community Engagement and Economic Development for the Supervisor. And it is the community engagement team that manages grants for the County District 4 office. Tonight, we will give you a presentation on County District 4's grant process. And at the end of the presentation, we will have a quick quiz, a Q&A, and a survey for feedback at the conclusion of this webinar. But before we get started, allow me to introduce Supervisor Monica Montgomery Stepp, Vice Chair, representing District 4 on the County Board of Supervisors. So,
Thank
welcome,
you.
Supervisor.
Thank you so much, Karen. Thank you to the community engagement team. Good evening and welcome everyone to our grants workshop. I am Supervisor Monica Montgomery Stepp, Vice Chair, representing District 4 on the County Board of Supervisors, and I'm very, very excited for all of you to join us virtually this evening. Tonight, my community engagement team will be walking you through our grants program. Our intention for tonight is to give you insight into County District 4's grant process by reviewing my priorities, our grants evaluation criteria, and providing you with tips for a successful grant application. Additionally, I want to give a special thanks to Tuesday McGowan, from the County of San Diego Economic Development and Government Affairs Office for collaborating with my office on hosting this workshop. So fiscal year 25-26 officially started on July 1, 2025, and each of the 5 County Board of Supervisors offices has $2 million of neighborhood reinvestment program funding and $1.3 million in community enhancement grant funding. We have those dollars to award to community-based organizations, and we have to award those dollars by June 30th, 2026. So please keep in mind that the presentation tonight is specific to how our office allocates grant funding. So that's County District 4 office only. This is how we allocate grant funding. And this presentation in no way reflects how other supervisorial offices administer their grant funding. Given the finite amount of discretionary grant funding available, my office will only award organizations that demonstrate the capacity to responsibly manage a county grant contract, and then also very importantly, demonstrate a potential positive impact on the residents of District 4. Nonetheless, we are here to help and will be accessible to you should you have further questions after this workshop. So with that, I just want to say thank you for all the important work that you all do for our communities. And we look forward to collaborating with you to better serve the County of San Diego. So now let me turn it back over to Karen, and thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Supervisor, for joining us tonight. And thank you for opening up tonight's workshop. So we will get right into all of the information tonight. So on the screen, you will see our amazing community engagement team, Max, Mariah, Joshua, myself, plus Tuesday McGowan, Group Program Manager for the county's Economic Development and Government Affairs Department, also known as EDGA. We will be referring to that department as EDGA throughout this presentation. You will be hearing from each of us on the different steps in County District 4's grant process. Tuesday McGowan will be presenting on what happens if you do receive a grant award from our office. So tonight's agenda will review 3 phases of our grants process, which are apply, allocate, and administer. In the phase, we will review the supervisor's priorities, grant schedule, the type of grants available, our website, and mandatory documentation. In the allocate phase, we will review our evaluation criteria, the board memo process, and things to be aware of if you choose to be a fiscal sponsor. Lastly, Tuesday, we'll review what happens in the administer phase if you are selected to receive a grant from our office. So moving on to the supervisor's priorities, those being housing and homelessness, clean and healthy communities, economic opportunity for all, and reimagining public safety. Tackling housing and homelessness alignment could include providing more resources to increase the supply of shelters, affordable housing, and wraparound services. Promoting safe and healthy communities could involve beautifying the community, addressing public health concerns, and promoting arts and culture. Increasing economic opportunity for all looks like creating jobs for historically underserved communities, creating workforce development programs, and addressing the gender pay gap. And lastly, for reimagining public safety, it could be efforts like youth mentoring programs and restorative justice programs. If your grant application demonstrates alignment with at least one of these priorities, your application will be strongly considered for an award. Ultimately, the supervisor's priorities serve as what our office knows internally as our pillars of governance. These pillars guide our policy decisions, guide where we distribute our grant funding, and guide who we appoint to our boards, commissions, and committees. It is the North Star of our office, providing us direction and purpose. So on the screen, is you will see the boundaries of County District 4. We cover unincorporated areas of Spring Valley, Casa de Oro, Mount Helix, and Rancho San Diego. It also includes incorporated areas such as City of Lemon Grove, City of La Mesa, and parts of City of San Diego. Our district goes as far north as Claremont, to the west, Old Town, to the east, Rancho San Diego, and to the south, Paradise Hills. We will be prioritizing organizations that serve the residents of County District 4 during our grant allocations. I'll hand it over to Joshua.
Thank you, Karen. My name is Joshua. I'm a community representative for Supervisor Monica Montgomery Stapp. Given the high volume of grant applications, only completed applications submitted through County District 4 Grants website will be considered for review. Each County of San Diego Board of Supervisors office, or BOS office, controls its grant schedule. As a result, grant schedules may differ, and it is highly recommended that community-based organizations, CBOs, contact an individual Board of Supervisors office on specific grant-related questions. If awarded, please keep in mind Board of Supervisors offices have the discretion to fully fund or partially fund any item requested for grant funding in the grant application. As a result, please be intentional about what you put in your grant application. District 4 will award CBOs one neighborhood reinvestment program, or referred to as NRP, and or one community enhancement, often referred to as CE, award per fiscal year. CBO will not get 2 awards in the same grant cycle. Grant applications will be accepted throughout the fiscal year. Review of the submitted applications and award announcements will depend on the grant application's submission date. We are currently in cycle 2, so anything that was submitted after the cycle 1 deadline, September 30th, will be reviewed according to the cycle 2 schedule.
Hi everyone, I'm Mariah, and I am also a community engagement rep on the team. There are two types of grants today that I will walk us through. The first.
Mariah, you muted yourself.
So sorry about that, everyone. I'll just start over, but there are two grants that I'm going to be walking us through today. The first is the neighborhood reinvestment, and the second is the community enhancement. Again, at the beginning of each fiscal year, July 1st, each board office receives $2 million in neighborhood reinvestment funding and roughly $1.5 million in CE grants. All right. So for the neighborhood reinvestment program, it can be summed up into one phrase, and that is one-time expenses. When you're shaping your grant applications, if your request consists of any capital improvements, purchasing of equipment or technology, or even food, you would apply for this grant, the neighborhood reinvestment program. Reoccurring costs cannot be funded whatsoever through the neighborhood reinvestment program. So if you're applying for rent or salaries, you cannot do that through the neighborhood reinvestment program. It will not be eligible for funding. Next slide, please. And so on this slide, you'll see some examples of previous allocations that we have awarded for. I will just read quickly. The Autism Society, they asked for purchasing laptops and docketing stations, so we were able to grant them that award. And then as you can see, La Maestra Foundation, we funded the purchase of non-perishable food items as well as supplemental produce. Next slide, please. And then for the community enhancement grant, we can say that essentially this grant is going to be used for anything that kind of promoting or boosting up the organization. So this grant you can apply for if you're going to be asking for anything that is tourism related, and that could be considered an event. If you're asking for grant funding for salaries, you would apply for this grant. Or if you want to, like I said, booster up your organization, you would apply here for program support. And then these are also some examples of previous allocations for the community enhancement grant. For the Harvey Family Foundation, we were able to allocate $100,000 to them. They were supporting families that received flood damage from the 2023 floods in District 4. First-gen scholars, we were able to support their request for paying their interns as well as a salary position on their team. Next slide, please. And then these are some very important takeaways when it comes to the community enhancement grant and the neighborhood reinvestment program. For community enhancement, you want to remember if you're looking to fund salaries, your program needs more support, or you are trying to throw an event, this is a grant you would apply for. If you are going to be applying for any one-time purchases, purchasing or installing new equipment or technology, or capital improvements, and capital improvements is also is infrastructure, so no stipends, no scholarships, and no gift cards for this grant in particular.
Thank you for
and
that,
now
Mariah.
I'll hand it over to Josh. He's going to go over the grant application process.
Thank you for that. For consideration, all applications must be submitted through supervisormonicamontgomerystep.com and include all answered supplemental questions, a submitted application, and all submitted required documentation. After visiting supervisormonicamontgomerystep.com, under the Grants tab, within the respective application you and your organization is applying for, there are 9 supplemental questions in which our office uses a part of our determination process. Some of the supplemental questions include: what is your organization's mission? If your grant request is serving County District 4 residents, what are the intended measured outcomes, addresses of events, and locations of programmatic efforts? How is your grant request aligned with the supervisor's priorities? Please know all supplemental questions must be completed in order for your overall application to be considered complete. And we have added 2 new yes or no questions to our supplemental section. Now for the application. You can download our application under Step 1, found in both the Community Enhancement and Neighborhood Reinvestment Program tab within our website. Each grant program will require its own application. Within the application, you will find fillable sections regarding eligibility, organization, proposal amount, activities to be funded, performance indicators, contact information, and financial solvency. For organization, please make sure to use the organization's name as indicated on your paperwork. Under activities to be funded, tell us about the activity, why you are doing it, but most importantly, what grant funds will pay for. We are looking for language like funding will be used to. Tell us in plain detail what you intend to purchase. For performance indicators, these are 2 questions that help the team understand how your organization measures / will measure impact of proposed activities and what other funding partners / sources you have for the project. And lastly, financial solvency. You will be asked to indicate any county community enhancement / neighborhood reinvestment grant money, city funding, other revenues, total revenues / expenditures. This is really important. Please note, you cannot ask for more than 50% of what your organization's current fiscal year operating budget is. Let's move on to step 3. Mandatory documentation. You will be required to submit 9 documents. That's the completed and signed application, the cover letter, detailed itemized budget specific to the grant request, signed resolution of the board of directors, signed Levine Act form, IRS letter showing tax exempt status, IRS form 990 or the EZ or 990 NE postcard, screenshot of your attorney general and screenshot of your secretary of state. For the attorney general, you want that to show current or exempt status. For your secretary of state, you want it to show active status. 2 major callouts here: the cover letter. I like to think of the cover letter as the synopsis of the overall application. Here should be the single document where the team can easily access who your organization is, what you are requesting, and why. Again, we are looking for language like funding will be used to. Tell us in plain detail what you intend to purchase. The Board of Resolution and Levine Act form. Every person signing your resolution of Board of Directors must also sign and complete the Levine Act form. I'm going to say that one more time. Every person that signs your resolution of the Board of Directors must also sign the complete Levine Act form. Moving on to churches. Churches must complete the application in full, copy of the IRS letter showing current tax exempt / nonprofit status, gross receipts of less than $50,000, attach IRS form 990 less than 200K, attach 990 EZ greater than 200K, or assets more than 500,000, full form. Churches will need to submit current or exempt attorney general, Secretary of State proof of nonprofit status, and copies of pertinent parts of articles of incorporation identifying persons authorized to sign a grant agreement. Thank you.
Thank you, Joshua, for going over the application process. In the next section of the presentation, we will share how our team evaluates applications, the board memo process, and other things to be aware of if you choose to be a fiscal sponsor. So let's review our evaluation criteria. There's a lot of information on this slide, but to level set, our office receives around 230 applications per cycle. To provide a bigger picture, in fiscal year 24-25, we received nearly 300 community enhancement grant applications. We awarded 63 organizations funding, and we received nearly 200 neighborhood reinvestment grant applications, making 69 awards. While our community enhancement is our smaller grants program, it does receive a higher amount of grant applications. So to reiterate, we are in our second and final grant cycle for fiscal year 25-26. That deadline is March 31st. And we do want to be transparent. We have expended most of our community enhancement grant funds in our first grant cycle that concluded September 30th. Additionally, in fiscal year 24-25, our average award was 23,600. Our highest award being 100,000 and our lowest award being 2,500. So once our grant deadline closes, our team begins to review all of those applications. And we begin by confirming your organization's application is complete. So have all required documents been submitted? Are all lines signed and dated? Is the organization in good standing? Based on the volume of applications, if an organization submits an incomplete or an unsigned document, we will likely flag it, move on, and it will not get funded. So again, we cannot share enough how important it is to go through each document, make sure everything is signed, dated, and everything is accurately filled out. So once the initial document review is done, we begin evaluating the application based on 4 levels of priorities that you see on the screen. So is the organization located in District 4? We do double check the address listed on the application. 2, is the grant request serving District 4 residents? Please include in your grant application District 4 locations you will be in or communities you will be serving. If you are not clear, we will have to indicate that your grant request is not serving District 4 residents, and it will bump you down in priority level. 3, is the request a direct service? A direct service meaning is the grant request helping folks meet basic needs. So again, provide as much detail as to how grant funds will be used. What will grant funds purchase? And lastly, does the grant align with the supervisor's priorities? So based on those questions, you will fall into one of 4 categories. Your organization's location and direct service are crucial priorities because we want to make sure and guarantee that District 4 residents are being considered. So please make sure to provide as much detail in your grant application. Moving on to evaluation and criteria. So in addition to making sure that all required documents are submitted, we are also looking at the completeness of an application, and also we also consider external factors. So we are looking for attention to detail. Are you asking for staff salaries under a neighborhood reinvestment application instead of a community enhancement grant application? Are you sending us your organization's overall budget instead of an itemized budget request specific to your grant request? Again, we have over 200 applications to review, and we do not have time to follow up with each individual organization when not enough details are provided. Second, we are looking for clarity and relevance. Are you providing us enough details to make a determination? If your grant request only tells us about an event, it will likely not be funded. We need to know how grant funds will be used and what they will purchase. Lastly, we look for realistic objectives. We've had an organization request $600,000 to purchase land to conduct operations, but they did not have any recorded revenue since they became a nonprofit. We want requests that are realistic, practical, and achievable, and of course, impactful. Overall, organizations must demonstrate a level of sophistication to manage a grant contract with the county. And it is all these things that help us determine if your organization possesses that capacity. Of course, there are other things going on in the world that impact our prioritization of grants to meet immediate needs of the community. For example, we had the 2024 floods, where we prioritized organizations whose requests were supporting flood victims. And even more recently, with the impacts from the policies coming from the current presidential administration, we have prioritized organizations whose requests support immigrant communities, addressing housing and homelessness, um, help fill a need for food security, and promote health and wellness. Moving on to the board memo. So after we review all of the applications, we provide our recommendations of potential allocations to the supervisor for approval. Once approved, a board memo is compiled by District 4 staff containing the following. 1, the organization's name. 2, how grant funds will be used. And 3, the amount allocated. As Joshua covered during the application process, there are multiple opportunities to let us know how grant funds will be used and what they will pay for. Again, we are looking for language like funding will be used for, funding will pay for, funding will purchase. We need to know in detail what you intend to purchase with these grant funds. This is what will inform the board memo and what you will be contractually bound to. So as much detail you can give us at the beginning will help you in the long run. The board memo is then sent to EDGA, Economic Development and Government Affairs, which finalizes the memo in collaboration with County Council, who ensures the grant request follows county policy. Once that is finalized, the District 4 office sends award and denial emails, notifications to community-based organizations. Also want to note that those notifications are sent to the people listed in the application. So whoever you want to be notified, make sure that that person's contact information is accurately listed in the application. So once awarded, everything is then transitioned to Edka, Tuesday, and her team. At this point, our office is no longer involved in the process as the contract is now between the organization and the county. Again, if you receive an award, if you have any questions regarding your grant, you will need to communicate with Economic Development and Government Affairs. So I will now hand it over to Tuesday, who will go over the administration phase, including grant agreements, grant periods, check processing, and reporting.
Thank you, Karen. Good evening, everyone. My name is Tuesday McGowan. I'm Group Program Manager with the County of San Diego, and I oversee the Community Enhancement and Neighborhood Reinvestment programs out of the Office of Economic Development and Government Affairs. Next slide, please. So for this evening, we'll be going over the post-award process. We'll cover 4 major topics, which is the grant agreement, your grant period, check processing, and reporting post-award. Next slide, please. So once you have received an award from District 4, as Karen mentioned, you would receive a congratulations notification from the Office of the Supervisor. Once it has happened, my staff will send out a grant agreement. The grant agreement has some very important information on it: your organization's name, the date that your award was approved, the effective date, meaning the start date of your grant period, which can be changed, the date of the memo, the award amount, which is finalized, and the approved grant purpose. It's very important that you double check all of this information. For example, your effective date, make sure that date aligns with your overall timeline and your ability to effectively begin your project. And make sure your grant purpose reflects activities that you have applied for and that you have a plan to execute. Next slide, please. So the grant agreement needs to be signed by a person who signed the resolution form in the application and submitted a signed Levine form. My staff and I, we verify these signatures both to protect you as well as the county, to ensure that whoever is signing the grant agreement is someone who in fact has been deemed as a person that has the authority to sign the grant agreement and enter into the contract on behalf of your organization with the County of San Diego. If the signatures do not match, my office will contact you to either have someone else sign the grant agreement, or whoever signed the grant agreement already, to ensure that they actually sign the board of resolution form and sign a Levine form. So please do make sure to double check the signatures that were on your application when you receive your grant agreement before you have someone sign the grant agreement. It's not acceptable to just have whomever is available that day in the organization to sign the grant agreement. Next slide, please. As I mentioned before, some important information that you need to check is your effective date. Highlighted there in the red is a sample effective date of March 11th, 2025. That date is put there based on when your award is approved. When you receive your grant agreement, there'll be language in the email that asks you to double check that and to make sure you're okay with that date. If you need to push that date out into the future by 3, 4, 6 months, that's okay. Just let my office know. We understand, especially with construction projects, sometimes things don't go on the planned timeline. And if you know that there's a backlog with some materials you've ordered to start a project and they won't be there for another 2 months after your grant agreement arrives, you don't have to start your grant period immediately when you receive your agreement. You can push it out a couple of months into the future. Simply respond to the email you receive from my office and let us know things are not running on time like we thought. We need to start our grant period a bit later. You still get the full 12 months. That does not shorten your grant period. So your grant period is 12 months. The entire process is 13 months, your grant window, but you have 12 months to spend. The 13th month is for you to gather your documentation for reporting. I highly, strongly recommend that once you receive your grant agreement, immediately begin a folder to include all of the paperwork that you receive from us. And as you go through your project, especially if it's something that's going to take you several months to work through, every time you spend money related to the project, put the receipt in the folder so that when those 12 months are over and you have those final 4 weeks to prepare your report, you have everything available to you so that you can easily complete your report in a timely manner. Next slide, please. So as part of the check process, Many organizations are frequent flyers, and I say that in a kind and loving way because that means you've done a great job and you've executed grant agreements properly in the past, and that means you get awards again year after year. However, if you're a newer organization, you're just learning about these grant awards, or you just now have a project that seems to fit the requirements and you've never been paid by the county before, part of the post-award process is to establish you as a supplier. That supplier is the term that the county uses for its payees. So if you've never received any money from the county before, we have to have you fill out a W-9 so that we can establish you as a supplier. That is part of the payment timeline. This is a non-negotiable. Everyone has to fill out this W-9 form in order to be set up as a supplier in the county system. And from there forward, then my staff can begin the process of initiating payment for you through accounts payable. So if you receive this form from my staff, it's important that you fill it out correctly and fill it out promptly, because the payment timeline for you will not start until we receive this form filled out from you correctly. Next slide, please. So reporting. As I mentioned before, your grant period is 12 months long. You get an additional 1 month to report on how you spent the funds. 11 months into your grant period, you'll receive a letter from my staff that says, hey, your deadline's coming up, your year's almost up, just a friendly reminder. Start gathering your documents, and that way you'll be prepared to submit your report on time. When you initially receive your award and your grant agreement, you'll receive all of the documents you need to document your spending. That's why I say establish a folder and drop everything in there as you spend. So you'll receive instructions regarding the documentation of grant expenditures. You'll receive instructions and guidance on how to prepare your list of expenditures, which backup documents to prepare, and how to organize all of that information and how to return it to my staff and me in EDGA. If you would like to scan all of your documents and email them to us, you are certainly welcome to. However, be careful of the size of your file. So you may need to break things up depending on how large your grant is or how small your individual expenditures are. You can put them in the U.S. Post Office, or you can deliver a hard copy to us. I don't recommend delivering a hard copy simply because parking is not fun downtown sometimes, depending on what day or what things are going on. Do not submit your original documents to EDGA. There is language for this in your grant agreement. You're actually required to keep a copy of your report that you give to us and keep it for a few years. If for any reason you anticipate being late, maybe someone's on vacation, maybe you misplaced a bank statement and it's not where you thought it was and you won't be able to submit your documents on time, no hay problema. Communication is the key. Email us, let us know that you are preparing your documentation, and you will have it to us in 2 days or 3 days. So when you receive the 11th month letter, it is not a warning letter, it is a reminder letter. There's no need to panic. Everyone gets an 11-month letter so that no one forgets, especially if you had a project that you were able to complete really quickly and maybe you did all of the things that you had intended to do with the funds 2 months into your grant period, but you didn't submit the documentation right away, and then you get this letter 7 or 8 months later. It's just a reminder. In addition to that, if you do complete your project early, you can submit your documents early to us. You do not have to wait until the deadline. We'll pull you off the list for an 11-month letter. We'll review everything, and when it's complete and it's all said and done, it's done. We do not send out confirmation of having received documentation or having completed it. It's too much. We have hundreds of grants that we are reviewing, so no news is good news. You may certainly email us and call us to verify, but we are not proactive in that area. We do not send out letters of confirmation or call folks to say, hey, we got it. You'll only hear from us if we need some additional documentation from you, or if we have some questions about some things that we see in your report. Next slide, please. So in reporting, It is possible to become a delinquent organization with the County of San Diego via Community Enhancement or Neighborhood Reinvestment Program grant. However, my staff work really, really hard to prevent this from happening. Things that may lead to delinquency are spending grant funds outside of the grant period. Perhaps your grant period started on March 11th and you realize that you started spending funds for this project in the prior December. That's outside of the grant period. Maybe you're late on your report already and you've not spent all the funds and you finished spending your funds in a hurry, but you spent funds outside of the grant period. We cannot accept those. We will work with you to make that situation correct. However, if you are not able to correct the situation, this could lead to you ending up being reported as a delinquent org. You may also find yourself delinquent if you've not read your grant agreement carefully and perhaps you spend grant funds on something that is not in the approved grant purpose. Again, we'll work with you to correct the situation, but if it's not corrected, you'll find yourself being included on our delinquent list. Also, if documentation is simply not complete, if there are things missing, if there are costs included, but there's no backup documentation to support how you've spent the funds, that could lead to little delinquency also. Many of the organizations that send in reports we have questions about, and we call the org and we work with you and it's no problem. 90% of the issues we're able to resolve. That small percentage that we're not able to resolve, unfortunately, do get referred to collections. The collections arm of the County of San Diego is known as ORR, or Office of Revenue and Recovery. They are a true collections agency, similar to the types of agencies that operate when folks don't pay car notes or credit card bills. It goes through the court system. So, if for some unfortunate reason documentation is not received properly from an organization and we're not able to secure a refund of misspent funds, an organization is referred to ORR. The consequences of that is future eligibility. You will not be eligible to receive a grant award from any district, not simply just the awarding district, from any district for community enhancement or neighborhood reinvestment funds for a year. If you're in a position to repay the funds, we will certainly set up a repayment plan if it gets to that. But as I said, 95% of the awards, probably even more, even if there is an issue with the reporting, more often than not, we're able to work with the organization and correct the situation. My staff goes very, very far, works very hard, puts on their thinking caps, tries to creatively solve a problem. We talk with counsel. We do everything that we can within our power, within the confines of the policy, to make the situation right for an awardee before they go to collections. Next slide, please. So the post-award grant process, this is a graphic of the timeline of how things go. So once the board office approves an award, you'll receive a congratulatory notification of award. After that, you'll be contacted by EDGA, you receive your grant agreement, we verify your signatures, and there's a back and forth arrow there because, as I mentioned earlier, sometimes the wrong person signs a grant agreement. So it might not be a straight line. You might have to go back and forth after we discover that maybe a signature is not accurate. If you're not already a supplier, we establish you as a supplier. So there's a little bit of back and forth there as we have you fill out a W-9 and verify all of that information. Once you're established as a supplier, I go through and I sign grant agreements, I sign general claims, my staff processes them, and we send them to accounts payable. Once accounts payable receives our batches and our invoices, they cut the checks, they send the checks to us. We mail out the checks to you with all of the instructions for completing your reporting documentation at the end of the grant period. Accounts payable at the county, they pay all of the county's bills. They don't just simply cut checks for us. We have a payment window of 6 to 8 weeks because our payments cannot be expedited. So depending on what accounts payable is working on, they may have some higher priority payments that are on tighter timelines, and we're in the queue behind them. Please be mindful of how you plan your timeline for spending and when you need your funds. Expediting checks is not an option for us. Simply, it's just no. There's nothing I can finagle. There's no creativity I can institute. There's no one I can beg 6 to 8 weeks. More than likely, it will happen quicker, but it is 6 to 8 weeks because I have to account for a lot of the unknowns and other priorities that accounts payable has. You receive your entire grant award up front. So be on the lookout for the check in the mail and make sure the right person is opening the mail and you deposit the check right away. Checks do go stale, so if for some reason you've overlooked it in the mail and it hasn't been deposited, checks go stale. I think it's either 60 or 90 days. We can reissue a check. Don't worry about it. The money does not get lost. But there is a process for that. You do have to sign an affidavit and things like that. And it could take a bit. It's a little bit of paperwork if we have to reissue a check. So please be on the lookout for your award check once you know that you've returned a grant agreement to us. Next slide, please. So a little summary here of the things that I talked about, some very important do's and don'ts. Make sure you read the agreement. Read the agreement. Email my staff, respond to the email that you receive and ask the questions. Double check that your start date works with the timeline that you're working with. Make sure the grant purpose is accurate. Make sure your signatures are valid before you send the agreement back to us. This could slow things down. Make sure you make and keep copies of everything. This is in your grant agreement. It's not something that we just ask of you. Please do keep your grant documents and keep copies. And ensure that your point of contact is correct. Just as Karen mentioned during her portion, it is very, very important that we have accurate contact information. This ensures that we're able to keep with our timeline for you so that you can receive your payment when you expect to receive it. And also that we have timely communication regarding reporting on the back end as well. Next slide, please. And so this is our contact information. We have a general email inbox that all of the staff in my office are able to check on a daily basis, several times throughout the day. We have a general phone number that is listed here that all the staff have access to. And the two links here on the screen are to the Community Enhancement and Neighborhood Reinvestment Program public-facing websites that contain all of the background information on the grants and awards that have been issued in the past. If you need to, when you get to the point where you need to mail something to us, our address there is on the bottom of the screen. When it comes to the post-award process, always send any documents to EDGA. Do not send any reports to D4. Once you have been contacted by EDGA, your communication regarding any documents, questions, or paperwork is with my staff in EDGA. And that is all I have. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Tuesday. So I will now get into fiscal sponsorship. So eligibility for both grants, you do have to be a registered 501c3 and in good standing with the state of California. But if you do not have a 501c3, you are able to get a fiscal sponsorship. So the fiscal sponsorship, the agreement will be between the fiscal sponsor in the county of San Diego. And so for the fiscal sponsor, it is important to note that since the agreement is between the fiscal sponsor and the county of San Diego and not the sponsee, the fiscal sponsor will take full responsibility for the contract. And this also includes submitting the required documentation, reporting, and receipts. We do encourage fiscal sponsors to make some sort of agreement with their sponsee just to clarify some of the roles, the responsibilities, and the expectations throughout the duration of the contract. So I also want to note that grant funds cannot be used and they must serve a lawful public purpose and cannot be used for religious political campaigning, or for private purposes. If the sponsee by any chance is spending outside of the grant period and also spending on items that are not included in the contract, and they're not able to, for example, like provide the required receipts needed, the fiscal sponsor will be sent to collection. So once again, we want to reiterate that maybe some type of agreement should be made between the fiscal sponsor and the sponsee. Our office's responsibility is to identify organizations and allocate funds. Once the funds have been allocated and the checks have been sent, our office is no longer involved in the process as the contract is now between the registered 501c3 and the county. Next slide, please.
Thank you for that, Mariah. And thank you again, Tuesday, for all the great information. I'm going to go over some helpful hints. So the first one is apply via the supervisor's website at supervisormonicamontgomerystep.com. Be mindful of the deadlines and the grant cycles. And this one I love the most, apply to multiple supervisors' offices. It will not discourage you to put in multiple applications to supervisors' offices if your program fits within their districts and in alignment with their priorities. Contact our office at 619-531-5544 or email us at district4grants@san diegocounty.ca.gov. And lastly, contact Economic Development and Government Affairs, also known as EDGA, at cenrpgrants@san diegocounty.ca.gov. At the end of the day, we want to help you help the populations you serve and at the same time build your organization's capacity. San Diego County is home to over 10,000 nonprofit organizations, and a recent report from the San Diego Foundation indicated 83% of San Diegans polled said they benefited from nonprofit services. So give yourself a round of applause for that. Our office wants to support that trend to help historically undeserved communities and our most vulnerable populations in County District 4. Thank you for your time today, and we are looking forward to reviewing your grant applications.
Thank you, Joshua, for going over those helpful hints. So before we go to Q&A, we do just want to do a little quiz. We covered a lot of information and we want to see how well the information was retained. So there will be a window pop up on your screen. I will give you some time to read and answer. So please bear with me as I get this started. So first question is, where are District 4 grant applications submitted? Email, website, or by mail? So I will give 30 more seconds for folks to fill that out. Okay, perfect. So the answer is, I will be closing the poll now. The correct answer is the website. We will only be accepting applications via our website, supervisormonicamontgomerystep.com. There is a grant page, and you can select the appropriate grant that you will be applying to, upload your documents, and submit there. We also just recently redid our website, so we highly encourage you to check it out. Okay, so again, submit applications through the website. We will not accept applications through email or mail. Okay, so second question. What actions will place an organization in delinquency? Spending outside of the grant period, spending on items not included in the grant purpose, incomplete documentation, or all of the above. So we'll give you all a couple more seconds to answer that question. Okay, I will be closing the poll now. So the correct answer is all of the above. Everyone answered this 100% correctly. So we do not, this grant cycle, we will not be having any organizations going to delinquency. So thank you all for answering that question. For our last question, sharing. Okay, last question. Who needs to sign the Levine Act form? The grant writer, the executive director, or persons listed on the resolution of the board of directors. I will give you all a couple seconds to answer that. Okay, I will be closing the poll. So putting your last answers. Okay. So we had people fill out and click every category, but the correct answer is persons listed on the resolution of the board of directors. Again, and when you download the grant application, there will be two additional forms that you fill out, the resolution of the board of directors and the Levine Act form. Whoever signs the resolution of board of directors also needs to fill out a Levine Act form. If we do not see the same signature, same names on both documents, it's going to delay your application. So thank you all for answering those questions. Yes. Okay. Thank you. We will now move on to Q&A. Feel free to click on the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom screen to type in your question. Our team has been answering diligently your questions throughout the Zoom, but we will give some additional time for you all to submit additional questions. Okay. So, just to reiterate some of the questions that have been answered, there are some questions that have been asked. The organization is in District 4, but works in a different area. We encourage folks to apply to multiple districts, multiple supervisorial offices. Do grants include funds for cultural events and refreshments? Yes, we do award funds for cultural events and food. So I am seeing questions regarding grant funding available. As I mentioned earlier in the presentation, we have expended most of our community enhancement funds. You still are able to submit applications, but they will most likely be considered for funding in the new fiscal year. So we highly encourage you to see how your request can fit into the neighborhood reinvestment grant program. For organizations that submitted applications in the past and were not funded, we can meet virtually to go over and provide feedback or have a phone call. This presentation will be available. This recording will be available on our website at the conclusion of this presentation, and it will live on our website, supervisormonicamontgomerystep.com, for you to reference at any time throughout the year. How long does it take for grants to get approved? It typically, our review process is usually a month and a half. So once it concludes on March 31st, awards are sent out early May. I am seeing one question. Please clarify, awardees can only receive one NRP or one CE in this next cycle. Can't receive one from each. So in order to make the funds last across all of the different organizations that we have in District 4, we only award organizations one neighborhood reinvestment grant or one community enhancement grant. We don't award organizations both grants in the same cycle. We do, however, we can provide an organization both in the same fiscal year. Okay, so I think that is it for today, unless anyone else from my team wants to jump on and say anything.
Thank you all for joining us. Reach out to our office if you have any additional questions or would like to meet with someone regarding your previous application or just questions in general. I believe the presentation will also be shared on our website. There is a current presentation from a previous workshop there if you would like to review that also. Some of the information has changed, but not most of it. So yes. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you all for attending our grants workshop tonight. After we conclude this webinar, a survey will pop up. Please fill it out. Give us feedback on tonight's workshop. Thank you all for the work that you're doing in service to our communities. Good night.